All right, hello everybody. This feels really small to me. Thanks for coming to Laracon EU. I feel like I've been to Amsterdam a lot of times now, which I never expected would be the case 7 or 8 years ago. So I'm really appreciative to everyone for coming out to the conference. So today I kind of wanted to show some Laravel 5.7 stuff and a couple things from Laravel Nova that we've been working on kind of in between the release of Nova at Laracon US and now. So Laravel 5.7, if you keep up with Laravel's release schedule, you may know that Laravel releases a new version every 6 months. So that usually comes out to about February and August. And so Laravel 5.7 is due and probably will release on Monday. And it's a really easy upgrade actually, just like some of the previous versions, like 5.6 and 5.5 were both pretty easy as well. And but also adds some kind of cool new convenience features and upgrades that I'll show you today. So that will probably come out on Monday, as well as the new Nova stuff that I show today will probably come out on Monday as well. How many of you have tried Nova so far? Oh, quite a few. Well, thanks for supporting Laravel. Hopefully you like it. So to kind of show some of this stuff, I've got a little project here where we can just walk through some of the Laravel 5.7 features first and just kind of take a look at them. Laravel Nova actually works both on 5.6 and 5.7. We originally built it on 5.6, and I built the prototype for it from about December of 2017 to February of this year. And then I took about 3 months off of it while David Hemphill wrote a lot of the front end, because I actually prototyped the whole back end and the front end, actually, but it was just super ugly because I don't really know CSS. So I took a few months off, and he styled it all, and then we finished it out in May. But so all of that was done on Laravel 5.6, so it actually works fine on both versions without any changes or upgrades at all. So, so to hop in, before I go into one of these features, I wanted to talk a little bit about signed URLs. How many of you have used signed URLs in Laravel? Oh, good. Not very many people, so that's actually good, so I can explain it. This is actually not a 5.7 feature. I think it was in Laravel 5.6 was the first version it was in, but it's a really cool little feature. And how it works is there is a method on the URL generator class, which I'm accessing through this URL facade here, called signed route. And you can see I have two routes here. I have this signed route that I've actually given the name signed, so that's what we're generating a URL for. And then it also accepts like some parameters if it has like query string values you need to add to it, or like a route placeholders or whatever. But if we call this route, let me show you what it looks like. Let's hit the link route so we can generate the URL. So link. And you can see you get this URL, and there's my parameter. I passed it with the user ID, and it also has this signature that's added onto it. And what this lets you do is generate a URL that you can check if it's been modified. So it's really useful in some situations we'll talk about in a second that's relevant to 5.7. But what I mean is, like, if we take this URL, I'll just get it in my clipboard real quick. And in this signed route, we're just going to call this request has valid signature method, which is just returns a Boolean, true or false. And so if I hit this in another tab, you can see that it's true because we didn't modify this URL at all. But if I tried to modify this, like change the user ID to 2 or something, then it would be false. It knows that it's changed. And the way this works is we actually use your app key from you may have seen it in like your environment file. And we take the whole URL without the signature, and we hash it with using your app key as a salt. And then we add that to the end of the URL so that when the request comes in, we can strip off the signature and then compare the hash again to the existing signature hash, and they have to match. And that way we know that the URL hasn't been changed. That's not a new Laravel 5.7 feature. One other thing about signed URLs is Laravel actually ships with a middleware, so this is one way to check if the request has a valid signature right here, just calling this method. But you can also have a middleware so that the route will not even be executed unless the URL is properly signed. So there's actually a built-in middleware called signed, which you may have seen in your HTTP kernel file in the default sort of Laravel application structure. So I'll just return here from this route. So now with this middleware in place, I'm going to change this back to a 1 so it should be valid. You can see we made it like through the route. But if we change this, then it's invalid. So we get a 403. All right, so the middleware is just a quicker way rather than having to manually do this if check inside every route you want to verify signature. So just wanted to point that out as an option. All right, so I just wanted to demo that to kind of lead into the next feature, which is the email verification feature in Laravel 5.7. Out of the box email verification where someone signs up and then they're sort of redirected to a page that says, hey, please check your email and click the link that we sent you to verify your email has been a really requested feature throughout Laravel's history. We just never sort of got around to doing it until now. But in Laravel 5.7, it's actually really easy, so I want to show you how it works. Let me go ahead and just refresh my database here. And if you've ever used make auth in a Laravel application, you know that it generates this auth routes method call, which registers the necessary routes for login, registration, reset password, stuff like that. So with email verification, you just pass in the option that you want to include the verification routes as well. Otherwise, they're not really included. So it's sort of an opt-in feature. It's not really out of the box when you do make auth. And then there's also a new middleware called verified that lets you prevent unverified users from accessing a route. So let's just kind of walk through the process and I'll show you kind of how it works. I'm going to flush out this log because we'll need it. All right, so Laracon EU test, go to register, Taylor Otwell, sign up. And we'll automatically be redirected to this page because we had that verified middleware in place, and it says, you know, before proceeding, check your email, blah, blah, blah. And so when we go check our email, let's scroll down to the plain text. You see we have this link, and you'll see it's actually one of those signed URLs I was talking about earlier. And I didn't demo it at the time, but you can also have expiration times on signed URLs. So you can sign a URL and say it has to be used within the next hour, or it's going to be considered invalid. And so that works very similarly where we just sign the expiration date right into the signature so we know that the expiration date can't be tampered with either. All right, so that's how email verification works. And so if we grab that link out of there and hit it in our browser, you can see now we can make it to the home page or whatever, and we can do it here too. So how that actually works is there is a new column on the, actually I don't need this, a new column on the default users table called email verified at. So when you hit that verification link, it's just populating that with the timestamp of whenever you verified your email. And then the verified middleware knows, hey, this column is populated, so they must have verified their email, and you can go through. So the nice thing about using signed URLs for that is we don't have to have a whole separate database table of email verification tokens, like we might have password reset tokens. So that's really nice. So we didn't have to invent an entirely new table just for this feature. We can just add this verified column and use the signed URLs. And because those are secure and we know that someone can't really feasibly generate a valid signed URL, it's pretty impossible to brute force with modern, computational power. So we don't need the table, we can just use the link and know that it's valid, if that makes sense. So check out signed links. I think they're a cool concept, and you can use them for other stuff like this, like invites and things like that. So check that out. Yeah, so anything else I wanted to say about this? One question I get asked a lot related to this is why can't we use this for password resets? Because you would think it is sort of a similar thing where we email them a link to reset your password, and you click it, and as long as the signature is valid, then you can reset your password. And yes, that is true. We could do that for resetting passwords, but the reason we sort of held off on that is because the app key, if it was ever compromised, someone could generate valid password reset links. And the situation where that would be a problem is if you had like an employee that became disgruntled and they left the company and they maybe had access to the app key, they could generate a valid password reset link and reset their boss's password and gain access into the system that way. So it would be a little bit of a pain because you'd have to rotate your app key every time an employee leaves that you're maybe worried about that happening with. And that's inconvenient if you're storing other encrypted data. So we felt the password reset was like kind of a more sensitive operation than just verifying your email, which is it's not that sensitive, not as sensitive as resetting a password. So that's why I didn't really feel comfortable using it for that feature, even though in theory you could have a similar approach to password resets and not need a database table at all. All right, so hopefully that wasn't way more information than you wanted. But, moving on, a new feature of Laravel 5.7 is so-called guest policies, which I have to admit, I personally haven't had a huge use case for them, but I do get asked about them a lot, so hopefully you find them useful. So to demonstrate sort of the current behavior, you may know that if you try to make like an authorization gate check or a policy check and the user is not logged in, it automatically just returns false every time. So like for instance, if I log out here and hit that auth route, and we'll dump out if I'm a guest or not, and then check this view ability on the photo policy. So typically this would just return true, but since I'm not logged in, it should always return false. So if I hit the auth route, you can see that I am a guest. That's the first true up there, but I don't have the ability to view a photo because I'm not logged in. So starting in Laravel 5.7, you can actually allow a guest to pass through into a policy method. And the way you do that is actually a new feature, or is by leveraging a new feature in, I believe, PHP 7.1, which is optional type hints, where you can actually prefix a type hint with a question mark to indicate that null is also a valid argument into this method. And Laravel will see that this is an optional type hint and say that, oh, okay, I won't return false just because you're logged out, and we'll see what the policy method decides. And you can pass through to the policy in that way. So now if I hit the route, we should see both values return true because it did pass through to the policy. And also in this case, if I were to dump out the user here, using the old trusted DD function, you can see that the user is null, so I'm not logged in. So if you're using this feature, you may need to check, do I even have a user at all, and take different approaches to your behavior. But pretty commonly requested feature, so hopefully you find that useful. So you can either use an optional type hint. The other way to do it, which I don't like as much, is using an optional value here, but I feel like it's kind of weird to have an optional first parameter and like a required second parameter. And I'm kind of surprised it's even allowed, actually, by the syntax. So I would probably prefer using the optional type hint like that. All right, so that is how guest policies work. Moving on down the list here, URL callables. This is a really simple feature addition, but some people may like it. So previously, to generate a URL to a controller action, you kind of pass this magic string in where it's home controller or whatever controller, @, and then the method on the controller that you want to generate a URL for. So of course, I'm sure you know how this works, where if we hit this route, you get a URL to that controller method. But in Laravel 5.7, you can actually use this callable syntax where it's more of your typical PHP callable array where the first argument's a class name and the second is a method. And some people, even though this, you can see this is actually a little bit longer to type, but some people prefer it because it lets you click through, you know, if you're using a PHP IDE, you can click through into that controller class straight from the action call. So some people find it more convenient in that way. But it has the exact same behavior where it works just as if you pass the string. And actually, it's just converting it to that string behind the scenes for you. So really simple, but worth pointing out. Another feature that may be of interest, especially with the international audience here, is notification localization. So we recently actually added this to the mailable services in Laravel, where your mail classes can be localizable. But in Laravel 5.7, we also added that to notifications. So how this works is I actually have an invoice paid notification that I've generated, and it's just this simple little blade view that's basically just the default notification template for a mail message. And you can see I've actually used the double underscore translation function right here so that I can make sure this is localizable. So what you can do, of course, is call this notifications queued, queue work, it's processed, and then if we look at our log, this will be the English version, of course, but I have a Spanish translation, so I'll uncomment that. And what's cool is this locale that you specify on the notification, which you can see right here on line 82, that actually will be carried over into the queued job, and it will remember what locale you specified and switch the default locale over and switch it back when it's done and stuff like that. So really, it's pretty seamless. I have a Spanish translation file here, which has all those translation strings that I need for this message, so that if I fire this off, that's still running, it looks like. We should see the Spanish version of the message down here. So if you have, where users can specify what language they prefer, now you can more easily translate your notification classes and have it all work pretty seamlessly, even if you're queuing them or whatever. So pretty useful, I think. So that kind of brings that into consistency with the mailable features we already had, just extends it over to the notification stuff, which is mail and, of course, SMS and Slack and stuff like that. All right. So another feature of Laravel, or one aspect that's new in 5.7 is a generator for invocable controllers. So invocable controllers were already supported, but now we're adding a generator for them so they're easier to make in your applications. So some of you may not know what I mean by an invocable controller. So what you can actually do in 5.7 is something like make controller, action controller, invocable. And if you look at that, it's just one invoke method that receives the request. And we can, of course, return whatever we want. And then when we define the route, we don't have to define any method at all. We just pass the class into this router call. And then when we hit this in the browser, it will call the invoke method by default. So that was already possible from the routing engine perspective. I just wanted to show you the new generator for that if you're a fan of using these actions. And I like to use these sort of invocable controllers. I wouldn't say I use them a ton, but I do get some use out of them. Like, to show you an example in Laravel Nova, if I have like a sort of complicated piece of code that needs to run in a controller and I don't really want to bundle it up with other controllers, like I think we have a lens resource force delete controller, which handles deleting resources, force deleting resources from a Nova lens. And a lot of times you can see I've called it handle here, but it's a single action controller which supports, Laravel supports either a handle as the method name or double underscore invoke, either one. But I like to use them for this kind of situation where I've got this kind of decent sized chunk of code that I don't want to bundle up with other methods. And one really cool thing I like to do as well is you can see how I've created this form request right here, this force delete lens resource request. A lot of people, I feel like, just use the form request for validation and authorization, but you can actually add any other methods you want to a form request, which I do all the time and I think is really cool. So, for example, on this resource request, you can see I've got this chunks method that like chunks through some of the models from the request with this authorization callback. I've got this deletable models method. And what that lets you do, I think it lets me write like a little bit more expressive and clean code in the controller because I can call these kind of customized methods for this particular controller action, like request chunks, or deletable models or whatever I need to call. And I did that all over Nova, all over the place. And anyway, just kind of a cool pattern you might want to think about because I don't think form requests get used for that very much. People are sort of locked into their only for validation or authorization. And sometimes I will actually make a form request and just make return no validation rules and always return true from the authorization method, and I'll strictly use it just for adding methods onto sort of a customized request that's specifically tailored for this controller action that gets automatically injected, which I think is really cool. Anyways, just a little Laravel tip. Pagination links. This is one of those like really simple features, kind of like die and dump, the DD function, but people seem to like really enjoy it. So pagination, to show you how it works now, if we, actually I have a note to myself to see the database with more users. So I'm going to make 2,000 users, and if I hit this pagination route, of course, many of you probably know what this looks like. You just get the list here, and I've rendered out the links, and if I go to another page, you can see that on each side of the current page, there is 3 links. So 6, 7, 8, and then the current page, and then 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, 3. So that was not customizable at all until Laravel 5.7, but thankfully, you can now do like on each side and specify how many links should be on each side. So this makes us super enterprise ready, I guess. Let's see. Or we could swap it down to 2. But it's just easier than overriding the templates and stuff like that. So if you use pagination a lot, that might be something you're interested in checking out. Really simple to use, really simple feature, but hopefully will save you some time. All right, console testing. This is a really cool new Laravel 5.7 feature that solves a pretty big pain point, actually, in writing console commands. So if I look at my routes console file, you can see I've got this command that asks for user input. So what is your name? What language do you program in? And then it calls this external service that does something and passes it that information right here on line 27. And then outputs your name is whatever, and you program in whatever language. So just to run the command, artist in Laracon, my name's Taylor, I program in PHP, blah, 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 there it works. All external service is doing is, it's just empty, it's not doing anything, but I just wanted to use it so I could show you the test. So previously in Laravel 5.6, it would be really hard to test this whole what is your name, what language do you program in flow. We didn't really have any helpers for that. But in 5.7, it's actually super easy. So you can say this artisan and then your command, and then you can say expects question, what is your name, and you can give it, I'm giving it the dummy input, Taylor Otwell. You can say expect another question, what language do you program in, and feed it the dummy answer, and then we expect some output, and then we assert that we exited with some exit code. So this makes it a lot easier to test artisan commands that ask for input, and in fact, I don't even know how to test artisan commands before this feature existed. That at least the ones that ask for input. So, and of course, I built the external service just to show you can still swap out dependencies in the container before you run this test. So I'm swapping with this little useful helper method that you may or may not know about. All this does is swap another instance into the container for this particular type. And I'm making a fake service that should receive the process method once with Taylor Otwell and PHP. All right, so I just wanted to show you that you can still mock even when you're using these features. So if we run this test, it of course should pass, and it does. So a lot easier to test this, and I don't know if I change this, it should fail. Yeah, so it says this was not printed. So yeah, if you write a lot of artisan commands, that will be pretty useful to you, I think. All right, illustrations. This is just really simple thing I wanted to point out, but kind of cool, I guess. So you may know we have a designer, we being Laravel, the company has a designer that works for us every third week. That's Steve Shoger, who designed all of the component logos you see. Like if you go to github.com/laravel/dusk or /cashier or whatever, they all have their own little unique logos. He designed all those by hand. He also created Heroicons and Zondicons and a few other icon packs. He also designed all of Laravel Nova, so he does a lot of stuff for Laravel. And I thought it would be cool if he designed error pages for the default framework error pages, because in Laravel 5.6, you know, if you hit a page that doesn't exist or you hit a 403 error, you get just like a really simple thing. And I just thought it would be cool to kind of see what Steve could come up with and hand draw some custom error page illustrations, sort of in the spirit of the whole Laravel art style that he's already been doing. So in 5.7, we have prettier designs that are all hand drawn by Steve that give you a little bit better experience out of the box, which was just kind of a fun feature for him to work on. So that's 404, or if I comment this out, if it's unauthorized, you know, we get a little fortress, 403, and we have for 500 errors, has its own illustration. And then if you're in maintenance mode, which I could just do using artisan down, I guess. So artisan down, you get a 503. So anyways, just really a fun little project that Steve, our designer, did. Wanted to point that out. So I thought they were really kind of cool, high quality SVG hand-drawn illustrations. So give him some props for those on Twitter, if you think about it. All right, so that's some of the, just a basic overview of some of the new Laravel 5.7 stuff. Again, like I said, super easy upgrade. I really think most of you will be done upgrading in 5 minutes. The biggest change actually from 5.6, I think, is, for example, let me just return a view right here. Oh, I'm still in maintenance mode. In previous versions of Laravel, you could do something like this in Blade, where it was like name or Taylor. But this is actually deprecated in 5.7 or removed in 5.7 because, for a couple of reasons. One, it's hard to actually parse this accurately with regular expressions, depending on what you're doing in here. And then secondly, because PHP now ships with a feature that does exactly this, which is the double question mark operator. It has the exact same behavior as what we were trying to sort of reproduce with that or keyword in the Blade stuff, and works the exact same, so that if the name is not defined, it will just echo out that string. So I feel like that's really the main thing that people may have to change. Most of the other stuff is sort of obscure stuff that you're probably not going to run into unless you're really hacking the framework under the hood or developing kind of complex packages. All right, so kind of shifting gears, I want to show some Nova stuff that we've been working on. So hopping into this Nova Laracon project, which I'm running on Laracon Nova. Log in here. All right. Okay, so if you haven't seen it, this is Nova. It's an admin panel for Laravel. So if I look at my users here, these are my users dashboard, and I can view and edit and search and look at metrics and create users and all that good stuff. So one thing we recently added, some people like to run this on the root domain of their site. So currently you have to run it on Nova / something or some other path, but we've recently added where you can now run it on the root of your server. So if I change the Nova, where am I? Oh, I'm in the wrong project. All right, if you change the path to just be a /, and we should just be able to hit the root, and now you can run Nova just right there. So some people like this because they want to run Nova on like a subdomain, like nova.theirapplication.com, and that wasn't possible actually until just a day or two ago. And so now you can do that. Another cool feature I want to show you revolves around the tricks field. So the tricks field is kind of cool. It's what you see is what you get editor of sorts for Nova, so that I have one here attached to this resource, and if I say edit David's record, I can do, hello world and text, and I can make it bold and italics or whatever. And it's just a nice little editor developed by Basecamp, so I can get an error. Anyway, and that updates the content right there. So, but when we released Nova, we didn't support any drag and drop images in this field. So starting on Monday, we're going to be supporting that, and I want to kind of show you how it works. So if I uncomment all of these little methods here, and now we should be able to drag this little image in here. And there it is. So it actually makes it really nice for, if you're writing a blog post, you want to include images, you can just drag them right in there, write your post, and then save it. And I want to kind of show you behind the scenes how this is working. So you can see I uncommented quite a few things here. And these are all the little hooks that you need to hook into to manage, where are we going to store these images? What if they attach an image and then navigate off the page and it's just sort of hanging in our storage but was never used anywhere? Or what if they delete the resource and stuff like that? So I'm going to kind of walk through the process one step at a time again so that we can sort of cover all of those cases. All right, so I'm going to edit this. I'll delete that for now. I'm going to clear that out. All right, so now we're back to a blank slate. So the first case, let me get these like on two separate halves. And I'm going to open up our storage. And I'm just storing them here locally so we can kind of watch the storage as we do this stuff. I'm going to get a database client open as well because that's going to be useful. Or Laracon Nova. All right. Okay, so let's go ahead and edit David again and drag this in. And I'm not going to save it yet. I just want to leave it like that. And if we go back into Sublime, you'll see that it's actually already stored in our storage. And this is done by the attach callback, which is store pending attachment. And if we look at store pending attachment, what it does is actually store the image on disk and create a pending attachment record in our database with the draft ID, which is a UUID, the attachment, what disk it should go on, stuff like that. It stores it. Okay, so that's why it's stored. Now, what happens if, like I said, we just navigate off this without saving, like we click on comments? What that will do is actually fire this discard callback, which discards pending attachments for this draft ID. And if we look at that, that will get all the pending attachments where the draft ID matches, loop through them all, and call the purge method, which deletes that record from the database and deletes that file from storage. So we haven't saved this yet, so if we navigate to comments, you can see that that file disappeared from the public directory automatically. So that's what the discard thing is doing, sort of cleaning up those files. All right, let's go back to David again. Edit, and drag the image back in. All right, now when we save this, right now in our database, Nova has inserted a record in this pending tricks attachments direct database table. I'm sorry I can't make this a lot bigger, but when we save the record, we actually want to move that as like a permanent attachment, so it's no longer pending and won't be discarded. So we're actually doing that using a model hook. Whenever we hear the saved event on the user, we can call the user saved or raise the user saved event, which will persist pending attachments. This is a listener, which gets all the pending attachments for that draft ID and persists each one of them onto the permanent tricks attachment table so they don't get discarded. So what you'll see is if I save this, now my pending tricks attachments is empty, and I now have one in just tricks attachments, which is our permanent attachments. And we can see it right here in the content. All right, and then of course, if I delete David entirely, this whole user record, we would of course want the file to be deleted, which it is, and that is being done by the delete callback and prunable. All right, so that is kind of how Trix drag and drop attachments work. Did that all feel like really complicated? Hopefully, because that's not how you would actually do it in practice, but that's how you would customize it all. What you would actually do is just say Trix with files, and it does all of that for you, so you don't have to worry about any of that. And if we go back into here, let's edit Atom. Drag this in. Save. And you can see it all works the same, and there's our file. And you don't have to necessarily write all those invocable classes all yourself. I just wanted to demo, if you wanted to hook into each step, of course, you could manage all of that for you, but Nova will actually take care of that whole process for you, so that as long as you just say Trix with files, you will get full drag and drop image editing in your Trix stuff, which is really cool. So really useful if you're using Nova to write blogs or any kind of marketing content. You would probably definitely need to include images in that content, and it's a lot easier now. So hopefully that's useful to you if you like Nova. So that was a really big feature we wanted to knock out. So there's that, and that will be launching Monday. The other Nova feature I wanted to show you really quickly is how to quickly generate color schemes. A lot of people really love their custom color schemes, so we've made that easier, and we'll also be shipping that out on Monday. And kind of how it works is there's a new Nova theme command, so that if I go to Laracon Nova and do something like, I'm going to clear all the changes for that, and do something like Nova theme, Otwell, whatever, it will generate this theme, ask me if I want to install it as a composer package. I'm going to say no for now. But just to show you the structure of what that means is I have this Miami Ice theme that David put together for us. And when you generate a theme, it's really simple. You just get one CSS file. And you can see this is all we've done to the CSS file is just change some of these color variables and the sidebar gradient. And all we have to do is install that as a package, and I'm just going to, I've been ignoring it, but I'm going to delete it from my don't discover so that it gets installed. So now that theme service provider you can see right here is automatically discovered, which means we don't have to do any other configuration. So if you install a theme using something like Marcel's package installer, you actually would have to do no other configuration. You could just install the package from the Nova UI and have a new theme brought in automatically because the service provider is automatically registered. And then, of course, we could also drop in a new logo. When you install Nova, it exports a logo.blade partial, which you can override in your View vendor directory. And now we have, our customized theme for Nova. So just use the Nova theme command really quick to generate a color scheme and put it out there on GitHub for other people to install. And you can obviously make other more radical tweaks to the CSS if you wanted to. But that will also be shipping out on Monday. So I think... So I think that's the gist of kind of what I wanted to demo for you today. Everything I demoed will be out on Monday, so you can play with it. So definitely check out the new features in Laravel 5.7. If you haven't tried Nova, give it a shot. If you can't afford Nova, email us because we send coupons to people all the time. If it's just not in your budget right now, we still want you to be able to check it out. So send us an email and we can send you a coupon. And thanks for coming to Laracon, and I'll see you at the after party.